Our world, in all its breathtaking beauty, possesses a power that is both creative and destructive. We travel across its surface, often in awe of its serene landscapes, its majestic mountains, and its tranquil oceans. We build our lives upon its crust, charting courses through its waters and skies, sometimes forgetting the immense primal forces that churn just beneath the surface and swirl within its atmosphere. It is a planet of constant change, a dynamic system of unimaginable energy that for the most part remains in a delicate, life-sustaining balance. But there are moments when this balance is violently disrupted, moments when the earth trembles, the skies darken, and the waters rise with terrifying force. These are the moments when nature reminds us of its true, untamable power. It is a humbling and often frightening spectacle, a raw display of the geological and atmospheric forces that have shaped our world over millennia. For those who find themselves in the path of such events, it is an experience that changes them forever, a visceral reminder of our own fragility in the face of such might. In this journey, we will bear witness to some of these extraordinary events captured by those who were there. Through their eyes, we will see the shocking, awe-inspiring, and sometimes devastating reality of natural disasters. We will look into the heart of the storm, stand at the foot of an erupting volcano, and watch as the very ground gives way. This is not just a collection of dramatic moments. It is a profound look at the planet we call home in its most turbulent and powerful state. It is a story of survival, of resilience, and of the enduring spirit of both humanity and the natural world. The coast of China, a vibrant tapestry of human endeavor and natural beauty, often finds itself in the path of nature's great atmospheric engines, the typhoons. These colossal, rotating storms, born over the warm waters of the Pacific, gather immense energy as they journey towards land. For the communities that dot this coastline, a typhoon warning is a familiar, yet always unsettling, call to prepare for a formidable onslaught. The air grows heavy, the sky takes on an ominous bruised hue, and an eerie calm often precedes the storm's ferocious arrival. It is a time of waiting, of securing homes and businesses, and of hoping for the best against a force that can reshape landscapes in a matter of hours. As the typhoon makes landfall, it unleashes its fury with a multi-pronged attack. The first to arrive are the winds, a relentless, screaming force that can tear roofs from buildings, snap power lines like twigs, and turn everyday objects into deadly projectiles. They whip the ocean's surface into a chaotic frenzy, driving mountainous waves towards the shore. This is the storm surge, a wall of water pushed inland by the sheer power of the wind, capable of inundating vast areas of low-lying land. It is a liquid battering ram, testing the resilience of every seawall, every levee, and every structure built to withstand it. The assault continues with rain, not just a downpour, but a deluge of biblical proportions. Water falls in blinding sheets, overwhelming drainage systems, and turning streets into raging rivers. The sheer volume of water saturates the ground, creating the perfect conditions for a secondary, but no less dangerous, threat: landslides. Hillsides, heavy with water, can lose their grip and collapse, sending a torrent of mud, rock, and debris cascading down into valleys and communities below. The combination of wind, surge, and rain creates a chaotic and perilous environment, a world transformed by water and wind. In the aftermath, the scale of the devastation becomes tragically clear. The cost is measured not only in the billions of dollars of damage to infrastructure, agriculture, and property, but in the disruption to countless lives. Homes are destroyed, livelihoods are washed away, and the painstaking work of generations can be undone in a single day. Yet, amidst the wreckage, a remarkable story of resilience begins to unfold. It is a testament to the human spirit that, even after facing the full, unbridled power of a superstorm, communities begin the arduous task of rebuilding of cleaning up, and of preparing, once again, for the inevitable return of the typhoon. In the rugged, breathtaking landscapes of Argentina, where the Andes Mountains carve a dramatic spine down the continent, the Earth is alive. It is a region shaped by immense geological forces, a constant, slow-motion collision of tectonic plates. For the hikers and adventurers drawn to these pristine wildernesses, the appeal is the raw, untouched beauty. They seek solitude and challenge among the towering peaks and deep valleys, often unaware that the very ground beneath their boots is in a state of perpetual, albeit usually imperceptible, motion. The stability of a mountainside is a delicate balance, an interplay of gravity, soil composition, and water content. A group of hikers, deep in this wilderness, found themselves witnesses to the moment that balance was catastrophically lost. It often begins with subtle signs, a trickle of pebbles, a faint rumbling sound that seems to emanate from the earth itself. But then, with terrifying speed, a section of the mountainside detaches. What was solid ground becomes a fluid, chaotic mass of rock, soil, and vegetation. A landslide is not merely falling rock. It is a river of earth, moving with astonishing power and momentum, consuming everything in its path. Trees are snapped and swallowed, and the roar becomes a deafening crescendo of grinding rock and shearing earth. For those hikers, the world was suddenly and violently upended. A tranquil trail became the precipice of a moving abyss. The ground before them, which they were moments away from traversing, was now a churning, unstoppable torrent. The instinct for survival is immediate and absolute. It is a frantic scramble for safety, a desperate retreat from the advancing edge of the slide. The air fills with dust, obscuring vision and choking the lungs. The sheer scale of the event is almost impossible to comprehend, as tons of earth are displaced in seconds, redrawing the very map of the valley floor. They watched, from a terrifyingly close but mercifully safe vantage point, as the landslide finally slowed, its energy dissipating as it spread across the valley. A vast scar was left on the mountainside, a raw wound exposing the inner layers of the earth. The valley below was transformed, buried under a new layer of debris. For the hikers, it was a profound and humbling encounter with the planet's raw power. They had walked into the wilderness seeking adventure and had come face to face with the geological forces that create the very mountains they admired. A stark reminder that in these wild places, nature alone dictates the terms. The vast plains of northern China, often a picture of agricultural serenity, can also become an arena for some of the atmosphere's most violent and localized phenomena. When conditions are just right, a volatile mix of warm, moist air colliding with cooler, drier air, the sky can breed a monster. It begins with a supercell thunderstorm, a towering, rotating behemoth of a cloud that carries within it the potential for immense destruction. From the base of this dark, churning mass, a funnel cloud can begin to descend, a pale finger of condensation reaching tentatively towards the earth. For anyone watching, it is a moment of dreadful anticipation. When that funnel touches the ground, it becomes a tornado. The transformation is immediate and dramatic. The previously ethereal wisp becomes a roaring column of dirt and debris, a vortex of incredible power. The sound is often described as a freight train, a deafening, all-encompassing roar that drowns out all else. On the plains of northern China, one such twister put an entire region on edge. It moved across the landscape not with random chaos, but with a terrifying sense of purpose. Its dark, debris-shrouded form a stark contrast against the brighter sky. It is a spectacle of both horror and hypnotic beauty. As the tornado churned across the open fields, it acted as a giant, violent plow, scouring the earth and lifting soil and vegetation high into its swirling vortex. The danger is not just the wind, which can reach speeds of hundreds of miles per hour, but the debris the tornado carries. It becomes a blender filled with everything it has ripped from the ground, turning fence posts, branches, and soil into a deadly, sand-blasting spray. For those in its path, there is nowhere to run. The only hope is to find shelter, to get below ground, and to wait for the terrifying roar to pass. The tension for those watching from a distance is palpable. Every shift in the tornado's path, every wobble and turn is scrutinized. Is it moving away, or is it heading towards the town, towards homes and lives? The tornado becomes a focal point of collective anxiety, a shared threat that has everyone on edge. Even after it dissipates, seemingly vanishing back into the cloud from which it came, a sense of unease lingers. It leaves behind a trail of destruction, a stark line carved across the landscape, and in the minds of all who witnessed it, an indelible image of the sky's unpredictable and concentrated fury. Yellowstone National Park, a jewel of the American wilderness, is a landscape defined by water and fire. Its geysers, hot springs, and rivers are really the lifeblood of this geothermal wonderland, a place where the Earth's inner heat meets the surface. The rivers that flow through it, like the Gardner and the Lamar, have carved out canyons and valleys over millennia. Usually, they're forces of gradual creation, but sometimes, a rare and potent combination of heavy rains falling on a deep, late-season snowpack can, well, transform them into agents of astonishing destruction. That's exactly what happened in an event that, honestly, would rewrite the park's geography in just a matter of days. The water came with a speed and volume that was simply unprecedented. Rivers, swollen far beyond their banks, became torrents of unimaginable power. They did not just flow, they raged. The force of the water was immense, tearing at the very foundations of the landscape. Ancient trees that had stood for centuries were uprooted and swept away like matchsticks. The water's erosive power was relentless, undercutting riverbanks and roads with terrifying efficiency. Sections of scenic drives, roads that had carried millions of visitors, crumbled and vanished into the churning brown water. The park was being actively and violently resculpted before our very eyes. Perhaps the most iconic and shocking image to emerge from this catastrophe was that of a house, a home for park employees, being torn from its foundations and carried away by the flood. The structure, which once represented shelter and permanence, was just tossed about in the current, a helpless casualty of the river's fury. It floated downstream, bobbing and turning, before finally succumbing to the immense forces and breaking apart. This single, dramatic event really encapsulated the sheer, overwhelming power of the flood. It showed that nothing, no matter how solid it seemed, was safe from the river's rage. When the floodwaters finally began to recede, they revealed a landscape that was, well, irrevocably altered. Entire river channels had shifted. New canyons had been carved where roads once ran. Bridges were gone, infrastructure was decimated, and the park was cut off from the outside world. The catastrophic floods were a stark and powerful demonstration of climate volatility. They showed that even in a place as wild and seemingly timeless as Yellowstone, the rules are changing. This event served as a dramatic warning that the delicate balance of our planet's climate is shifting, with consequences that can be both sudden and devastatingly powerful. In the Tyrrhenian Sea, off the northern coast of Sicily, lies the island of Stromboli. It's, in essence, the peak of a massive underwater volcano, one of the most active on the entire planet. For centuries, it's been known as the lighthouse of the Mediterranean because of its remarkably consistent and frequent small-scale eruptions. These minor bursts of fire and rock happening every few minutes act as a constant, rhythmic exhalation from the Earth's molten heart. They're a familiar spectacle for the island's residents, and a real lure for volcanologists and tourists who come to witness this contained, predictable display of volcanic power. However, this steady rhythm can be deceiving. Beneath the surface, pressures can build, leading to much larger, more violent events known as paroxysms. These are not the gentle puffs of the volcano's normal state, but explosive, cataclysmic detonations that unleash the true power lurking within. A live webcam, set up to observe the volcano's daily activity, was perfectly placed to capture one such magnificent and honestly terrifying event. Without warning, the routine puffing stopped, and the mountain unleashed a colossal explosion. A shockwave, visible even on camera, rippled through the air as the volcano blasted a towering column of ash, gas, and incandescent rock thousands of feet into the sky. The eruption was just a multi-sensory assault. A deafening roar, the sound of a mountain tearing itself apart, echoed across the sea. The plume of ash, a dark, cauliflower-shaped cloud, billowed upwards with incredible speed, blotting out the sun and turning day into an eerie twilight. From this dark column rained pyroclastic material, a deadly shower of superheated rocks and volcanic bombs. At the same time, a pyroclastic flow, a superheated, fast-moving avalanche of gas and volcanic debris, surged down the volcano's flank, the Sciara del Fuoco, or Stream of Fire, and crashed into the sea, sending up vast clouds of steam. For those watching on the live feed, it was a privileged front-row seat to one of Earth's most spectacular and dangerous processes. The footage captured the raw, untamed energy of a planet in creation. It was a visceral reminder that beneath the placid surface of our world lies a realm of unimaginable heat and pressure. The Stromboli paroxysm was not just a geological event. It was a work of elemental art, a terrifyingly beautiful display of fire and earth. It showed, in stunning detail, how a mountain can breathe fire and in an instant assert its dominance over the landscape. The Indonesian archipelago, a vast chain of islands straddling the equator, is a place of intense atmospheric activity. Its location in the warm, tropical seas makes it a crucible for powerful storms. For a security guard on duty, the night began like so many others, with the familiar sounds of the tropics and the predictable rhythm of a routine patrol. But, the weather forecast carried a note of menace, and as the shift wore on, the sky began to transform. The air became thick and heavy, and distant flashes of lightning began to stitch the horizon with silent, electric light. A powerful storm was gathering its strength and taking aim. The first sign of the storm's imminent arrival was the wind. It started as a whisper, rustling the palm fronds, but quickly grew into a persistent howl. Then came the rain, not a gentle shower, but a solid wall of water that slammed into the ground, instantly overwhelming everything. Visibility dropped to near zero, the world outside the guard's small shelter reduced to a churning gray chaos. The sound of the wind and rain became a deafening, continuous roar, punctuated by the sharp crack of thunder that seemed to shake the very ground. The guard was no longer just an observer. He was a solitary sentinel trapped inside the heart of the storm's fury. Through the sheets of rain, he witnessed the storm's power firsthand. Structures that were not securely fastened were ripped apart. Trees bent to impossible angles, their branches flailing violently until they snapped. The sheer force of the wind and water was a physical presence, pressing in from all sides. In such a situation, a sense of profound isolation takes hold. The guard was a tiny, vulnerable point of human consciousness in a world consumed by elemental rage. His duty was to watch, but what he was watching was the systematic and violent deconstruction of his surroundings by a force completely beyond control. When the storm finally passed, its energy spent, it left behind a world soaked and battered. The dawn revealed the extent of the damage: fallen trees, damaged buildings, and a landscape littered with debris. For the security guard, the night had been a long and terrifying ordeal. He had not been a distant spectator, but had endured the storm from within its violent core. His experience serves as a powerful personal testament to the overwhelming force of tropical storms and the courage of those who must face them, armed with little more than a small shelter and their own resilience against the raging elements. The vast, open grasslands of Inner Mongolia in China provide, well, a perfect stage for dramatic atmospheric theater. On this immense, flat expanse, there's nowhere for the weather to hide. When the right ingredients combine, instability, wind shear, and moisture, the sky can produce spectacles of terrifying scale and grandeur. On one particular day, the conditions were ripe for the formation of a tornadic supercell. Residents watched as a thunderstorm of monstrous proportions began to organize itself, its base darkening and rotating with a clear and ominous intent. From this rotating updraft, a true giant was born. It was a massive wedge tornado, one of the largest and most destructive types. Unlike the slender rope-like funnels, a wedge tornado can be a mile wide or more at its base, appearing as a dark, churning mass of cloud and debris that seems to scour the earth rather than just touch it. As it moved past the city, its sheer scale was, well, both breathtaking and horrifying. It was not just a feature in the sky, it was the entire sky, a colossal, rotating wall of darkness that dwarfed the landscape and the urban structures on the horizon. The sight of such a behemoth instills a unique kind of fear, a sense of utter powerlessness against a force of such magnitude. The tornado's movement was slow and deliberate, adding to the tension and dread. It wasn't a fleeting event, but a prolonged display of nature's capacity for organized destruction. Its outer winds, while less intense than the core, were still powerful enough to cause significant damage, and the roar it produced could be heard for miles. For the city's inhabitants, it was a horrifying spectacle unfolding on their doorstep. They were close enough to witness its full, terrible glory, to see the constant flashes of lightning within the dark mass, and to feel the palpable tension as it churned ever onward, its path uncertain. This massive tornado served as a powerful reminder that these violent storms are not confined to the plains of North America. They can and do occur wherever atmospheric conditions permit, and their appearance in a region like Inner Mongolia highlights the global nature of extreme weather. The footage captured of this event is invaluable, providing meteorologists with data and offering the public a chilling glimpse into the heart of a spinning colossus. It is a vision of chaos on a planetary scale, a moment when the atmosphere itself seems to wage war on the land below. For the glittering, densely populated metropolis of Macau and the surrounding regions of southern China, typhoons are a known and respected adversary. Decades of development have been shaped by the need to withstand these seasonal onslaughts. But, every so often, a storm comes along that defies all preparations, a storm that redefines the scale of destruction. Typhoon Hato was such a storm. It was not just another typhoon, it was a monster, the strongest to strike the region in over half a century. As it approached, it underwent rapid intensification, transforming from a strong storm into a catastrophic super typhoon in the final hours before landfall. The arrival of Hato was an overwhelming assault. The winds were of a terrifying and sustained violence, reaching speeds that few structures were designed to withstand. Cranes atop high-rise buildings, symbols of the region's relentless growth, spun like toys before collapsing. Scaffolding was peeled from skyscrapers, and glass windows on entire floors were blown out simultaneously, creating a blizzard of deadly shards. The storm surge, pushed by these incredible winds, was equally devastating. Seawater surged into the low-lying city streets, flooding the opulent lobbies of casinos and turning underground car parks into deadly submerged traps. The human experience within the storm was one of chaos and fear. People were trapped in their apartments, listening to the horrifying shriek of the wind and the sound of their city being torn apart. In the streets, the water rose with shocking speed, catching many by surprise. Cars were swept away, and the force of the flowing water was strong enough to knock people off their feet. It was a complete breakdown of normal life, a city under siege from the elements, with power cuts plunging millions into darkness at the height of the storm's fury, adding to the terror and disorientation. In the aftermath, Typhoon Hato left a legacy of devastation and a profound sense of shock. The economic cost ran into the billions, but the human cost was even greater. The storm exposed vulnerabilities in a region that thought it was prepared for anything. It served as a brutal lesson in the power of nature and a stark warning about the increasing intensity of storms in a warming world. Hato was a wake-up call, a 50-year storm that reset the benchmark for what was possible and forced an entire region to reconsider its relationship with the sea and the sky. On the Indonesian island of Java, a place forged in the crucible of the Pacific Ring of Fire, volcanoes are not just geological features. They are a dominant and ever-present part of life. Mount Semeru, the highest peak on the island, is one of its most active and dangerous. For the thousands of people living in the villages on its fertile slopes, the volcano is both a source of life, providing rich volcanic soil for farming, and a constant looming threat. Folks live in a delicate symbiosis with the mountain, aware of its power, but bound to the land it has created. This fragile peace was shattered when Semeru awoke with explosive violence. It wasn't a gentle effusion of lava, but a massive eruption that sent a colossal column of hot ash and gas miles into the atmosphere. The sheer energy of the blast was staggering. As the eruption column grew, it became too dense to support its own weight and collapsed. This triggered the most terrifying of all volcanic phenomena, a pyroclastic flow. A scorching, fast-moving avalanche of ash, rock fragments, and gas, heated to hundreds of degrees, began to surge down the mountain's flanks, following the river valleys. For the villages in its path, there was little warning and even less time to escape. The pyroclastic flow moved with the speed of a race car, an unstoppable gray torrent that incinerated and buried everything it touched. It transformed a lush, green landscape into a monochromatic scene of devastation, a gray desert of hot ash. Homes were buried, forests were flattened, and the very topography of the river valleys was altered in minutes. The sky darkened as ash began to rain down, blanketing the entire region in a thick, suffocating layer and turning day into an apocalyptic night. The human cost of Semeru's fury was immense. Over 5,000 people were displaced, their homes and livelihoods gone, buried under the hot ash. Rescue efforts were perilous, hampered by the still hot deposits, the threat of further eruptions, and the toxic gases. The eruption of Mount Semeru was a catastrophic event that highlighted the extreme dangers faced by communities living in the shadow of active volcanoes. It was a brutal reminder that while these mountains can be providers, they possess a destructive power that can, in an instant, reclaim the land it once gave. In the world of tropical meteorology, storms are categorized by their wind speed, a seemingly straightforward measure of their power. Typhoon, hurricane, tropical storm, these labels create expectations about the level of threat. When Tropical Storm Linfa approached the coast of China, its designation suggested a lesser threat than a full-blown typhoon. It lacked the extreme winds that often cause the most dramatic structural damage. However, this classification belied the storm's true destructive potential, which lay not in its wind, but in its water. Linfa was a slow-moving system, and honestly, that's a characteristic that can be incredibly dangerous. Instead of passing quickly, it lingered over the region for an extended period, allowing it to unleash a truly staggering amount of rainfall. The storm acted like a giant atmospheric hose, drawing moisture from the warm sea and dumping it relentlessly over the same area for hours on end. This prolonged, torrential downpour quickly overwhelmed the natural and man-made drainage systems. Rivers began to swell, and the ground became completely saturated, setting the stage for a widespread and devastating disaster. The primary impact of Linfa was catastrophic flooding. Streets in towns and cities transformed into canals, with muddy water inundating homes and businesses. But, the greater danger was unfolding in the surrounding hills and mountains. The waterlogged soil, unable to absorb any more moisture, lost its cohesion. This triggered numerous and widespread landslides. Entire hillsides gave way, sending massive flows of mud, rock, and debris crashing down into populated valleys below. These were not small slips, but large-scale failures of the landscape, powerful enough to bury buildings and sweep away roads. The damage caused by Linfa was immense, a powerful illustration that the official category of a storm does not always tell the full story of its impact. It demonstrated that a mere tropical storm can be just as deadly and destructive as a powerful typhoon, albeit through different mechanisms. Linfa's legacy is a crucial lesson in risk perception. The greatest threat from a tropical cyclone is often water, both from the sky and from the ground itself. It was a slow-motion disaster that caused significant damage and proved that in nature, power comes in many forms. We have journeyed to the raw edges of human experience, witnessing moments when the ground beneath our feet and the sky above our heads unleashed their formidable power. From the twisting fury of a tornado to the fiery breath of a volcano, we have seen our world not as a static backdrop, but as a living, breathing, and sometimes violent entity. These events, captured in all their terrifying grandeur, are not anomalies. They are an intrinsic part of the planet's machinery, the colossal forces of creation and destruction that have shaped continents and carved oceans over aeons. In the face of such overwhelming power, our own endeavors can seem so fragile. The homes, the roads, the cities we build, all exist by the consent of geological and atmospheric forces far greater than ourselves. Yet, what we also witness in the aftermath of these disasters is something equally powerful: the extraordinary resilience of life. We see communities coming together, strangers helping strangers, and the unwavering human spirit beginning the arduous task of rebuilding. It is a profound testament to our ability to endure, to adapt, and to carry on. And so, as we look upon our planet, we must do so with a renewed sense of humility and wonder. It is a world of breathtaking beauty and serene calm, but also one of untamable energy. Our survival here has always depended on our ability to understand, respect, and adapt to its powerful rhythms. These glimpses into nature's fury are not just a spectacle, they are a vital lesson. They remind us that we are not masters of this world, but participants in its magnificent and at times perilous journey through time.